Pat Forde from Yahoo Sports covers college sports. And now, Pat, how great was Christian Laettner? And did you hate Christian Laettner?
Oh, he was great, and I loved him because I was a sports writer, and he was exactly the kind of guy you want to cover. He had personality, he had ego, he had ability, and he was a lightning rod. So he was a great player, that's for sure.
Yeah, I always tell people, because sometimes we'll look at guys in college, no matter what sport it is, but we'll look at them and suddenly we diminish their college career by what happened in the pros. And I always say, look at Laettner's numbers in the pros. He wasn't a bust. He played 15 years in the NBA.
Sure, yeah, no, I mean, he didn't dominate the NBA the way he did in college, but that did not make him a bad player by any stretch. I mean, and he wasn't given that spot on the 92 Olympic team out of charity. If they were going to take college guys, then he made sense. I mean, he could play basketball, no doubt.
I read your column. You caught my eye when you said Boeheim should be fired for what he did. Explain that.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that he had complete the irresponsible oversight of his program. The stuff that went on, it wasn't an isolated thing here or there. It wasn't, one mistake. It was systematic, what was happening. There was, academic fraud. There were drug tests that were ignored. There was a booster who was getting money to players, and it went on over a long period of time. And the other piece of this is it's their second postseason ban.
Yeah.
They were banned early in the 90s, and I wrote in the column, I mean, not a lot of coaches survive one postseason ban, and I don't think anybody should survive two, even a coach as great as Jim Boeheim.
Is it hard to put his fingerprints on some of this, though, Pat?
I mean, to a degree, I suppose, but Britton Banowski, who's the chair of the Committee on Infractions, made the point on the conference call that the director of basketball operations that Boeheim hired personally to improve academic performance was the guy doing the cheating.
Yeah.
Logging on to players' emails and, sending emails into their name and doing work for them. And to me, that's close enough. That your fingerprints are on that guy, and that guy's fingerprints are all over this thing. And Jim Boeheim knows what goes on in his program, so I don't have any problem tying him to it.
Isn't it punishment enough to actually keep him on the job with the scholarship reductions and postseason ban and all of that?
I don't think so, although his first game on the job thereafter, I'm not sure he covered himself in glory by sending Mike Hopkins to meet the press.
Oh, I know. You send your assistant coach for a post-game interview, and granted, even if Boeheim can't talk, don't send your assistant coach. That's wrong. That's wrong.
And then, you know what? He's 70 years old. He's making, millions of dollars. He should be able to handle that post-game press conference, even if it's difficult, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's full of I can't comment. Handle it. You can do that. You're a big boy.
Why 10 years to investigate this, though, Pat?
Yeah, that was messy, there's no doubt the NCAA certainly criticized itself for that, for the length of it, and justifiably so. But the complicating factor is that when they were nearing completion of this thing, they blew up the entire enforcement staff. Mark Emmert fired Julie Lash, who was the director of enforcement, and everybody else quit, and that put everything, all these investigations, Miami and several other ones that have been ongoing, way behind because they had to hire new staff, and the new staff had to figure out what they were doing and then finalize this thing. So to me, it's not ideal by any stretch to have an investigation that long. But the NCAA did it to itself.
Pat Forde from Yahoo Sports joining us, Dan Patrick Show. Best NCAA teams, aside from Kentucky.
Saw Wisconsin in person yesterday. Man, did they look good. That was impressive showing on the road, destroyed Ohio State. I think it would be a very intriguing matchup against Kentucky. Duke, I think, has the most talent outside of Kentucky, maybe the most talent, period, just not as much talent as Kentucky in terms of, their best players, I think, are better than Kentucky's best players. They just don't have 9 really good ones. After that, Virginia is good, but if they don't get Justin Anderson back, I don't see them making the Final Four or playing for a national title. Arizona, if they could make shots, I think could be there, but that's kind of a big if.
Can you remember a year where it was that thin, or it's this thin, of contenders aside from just one?
Not really, no. It's truly one of those years where if the bet is Kentucky or the field, Kentucky is an intriguing bet. Most years that's a crazy bet, but it's kind of like when Tiger Woods was rolling, where it's Tiger or the field in majors. I think you have to at least consider it.
We had Jay Billis on from the Mothership, and he said, look, if we're going to hold Jim Boeheim accountable, then should we be looking at John Wooden when he had his sugar daddy, Sam Gilbert, a booster there, who was paying players to go to UCLA?
Possibly, yeah. I don't. That was before my reckoning, really, as a journalist. So I don't know, but I've read a lot about it. I read Seth Davis's book. There were certainly reasons to suspect that John Wooden should have known.
But we never bring that up. We've separated church and state there with John Wooden and Sam Gilbert. Why is that?
I think, honestly, because John Wooden was such an exalted figure. He was not only the greatest winner, but the way, he handled himself and the kind of aura that was built up around him is almost St. John. And so how do you put St. John in the category of guys who have cheated? That's the hard part for people to, I think, get their arms around. And golly, is there anybody in college basketball that you can't throw some mud on? That's the disappointing part of the sport. Is you go down the line. I mean, the North Carolina academic scandal started under Dean Smith's tenure. I mean, geez Louise, nobody is sacred, basically, in college basketball. It's a sad thing to say.
Why did they let Syracuse keep the national title?
Great question. I asked the question basically of who was involved in arriving at the very convenient statute of limitations date of May 4th, 2003, less than a month after they won the title. It was just the enforcement staff in Syracuse came to that agreement, and I thought that was very tidy. Given the fact that the report says that the drug testing issues began in 2001, I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but I think it was convenient.
Thank you, Pat.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
That's Pat Forde from Yahoo Sports.